Good morning, dear colleagues. My name is Kostas Raftopoulos, and I am the head of the Management and Control Unit B1 in the Managing Authority of the Operational Program Transport and Environment in Greece. During the last 2.5 years, I'm also responsible for the development and implementation of our administrative capacity building roadmap in this pilot action launched by the European Commission and supported by the OECD, with the participation of 4 more managing authorities from Bulgaria, Croatia, Poland, and Spain. In Athens, we decided to participate in this pilot project because our managing authority experienced a great shock in 2015 after the merger of the 3 managing authorities that in the previous programming periods managed different operational programs. The managing authority of the motorways, the managing authority of the railways, and the managing authority of the environmental protection program were suddenly merged into one due to the economic crisis of that time. From the first moment, we realized that we needed to take immediate action in relation with our systems and our people to homogenize the way we operated. We started with the information systems. We replaced all scattered systems with a new single document management system, and then we moved forward by establishing cross-functional teams to identify sources of heterogeneity and distribute good practices across the 3 previous structures. Moreover, it was obvious that first we needed to pay special attention to the upgrade of our people's skills, especially the soft skills that were almost neglected during the last years. And second, we needed to investigate alternative methods to enhance our beneficiaries' administrative capacities, since our experience from the previous programming period showed that the traditional training programs were not enough. So, when we were informed of the Commission's initiative, we had already convinced ourselves and our political leadership about the need to enhance our administrative capacity, and we had taken the first steps. However, our participation in this particular pilot action accelerated the process that we had put in place from 2015. Without this project, the developments would be much slower and fragmented. Now, administrative capacity building has become something like a part of our day-to-day working lives, and we feel confident that our organization will be well prepared for the new programming period. To closely monitor the development of our roadmap, we decided to have only one single team working with the OECD and the Commission. Both sectors and both horizontal units of the managing authority, in other words, the transport sector, the environment sector, the programming and evaluation unit, and the organizational support unit were represented in the team. We also had with us the managing authority's quality management system coordinator and a representative of the national coordinating authority. More specifically, a representative of the Special Institutional Support Service, called ACB in Greek, which is an agency responsible for setting up and improving the management and control system in Greece. We started to exchange emails, fill in questionnaires, and organize interviews and workshops with our stakeholders under the guidance and support of the OECD and Unit E1 of the DG Regio. And what a relief when at the first workshop, we realized that the response of the people was impressive. More than 100 participants from approximately 40 different agencies, beneficiaries, other managing authorities, intermediate bodies, the agencies of the National Coordinating Authority, the Audit and the Certifying Authority, NGOs, and many, many others were mobilized to come and give us their feedback on how we could become better. The same enthusiasm was also displayed inside the managing authority. The management team and the frontline employees that participated in this preparatory phase were so open and eager to contribute to developing our roadmap of administrative capacity building actions. My team was filled with confidence and started to promote the idea of the administrative capacity building at every occasion. After 9 months of hard work, the final version of our roadmap was ready to fly. Our roadmap consists of 19 actions in total. 11 actions have to do with our people and our organization management. 6 actions focus on refining governance, and 2 actions are related with enhancing communication and improving the SIF management and control system. Special attention was paid to make sure that our stakeholders would also benefit from the administrative capacity building initiative. The actions dedicated to our people and organization had to do with performing an employee engagement and enablement survey, reviewing our performance management system, analyzing our skills, and preparing a learning and development plan, preparing a toolkit for managers, adopting best practices from a managing authority of a similar OP from another member state, enhancing harmonization between the 2 sectors of our managing authority by performing joint on-the-spot verifications and joint project selection, making internal mobility opportunities more transparent, sharing information among sectors and units, dedicating time to team building events, and developing common internal rules of procedure applicable to all managing authorities. To fine-tune governance, we promote...
Kostas, if you can go back to the other slide, we can ask participants to ask questions. I would have one question here, Kostas. Which country did you visit? You speak about best practice of other countries, a study visit. Can you give us more info there?
We are going to use the TIEX tool, the peer-to-peer tool, to have a study visit in another managing authority, in another member state with a similar OP. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, this specific action had to be postponed. I will give you some, I will tell you about this postponement later. We're going to organize it in cooperation with the unit E1 of managing authority to help us to find a managing authority of a similar OP. So to fine-tune governance, we promote synergies between the 2 sectors. We organize regular technical meetings with our intermediate bodies and a series of knowledge transfer workshops for our beneficiaries. We develop information material for our beneficiaries and other stakeholders in easy-to-understand language, and we continue to review and update our risk management tool. A special report on the use of financial instruments to finance transport and environmental protection projects is prepared and will be circulated to the line ministries. We have established a regular annual meeting among the Audit Authority, the Certifying Authority, and the National Coordinating Authority to share experiences and enhance common understanding. And finally, a management and control system thematic network of the managing authorities, the Certifying Authority, and the National Coordinating Authority will be formed to serve as an information and experience exchange platform. The roadmap was presented to our personnel in November 2019. We dedicated a whole day outside the office to share with every colleague the purpose of the administrative capacity building, to describe how we had worked until then, to present in detail every action, to communicate the upcoming opportunity to meet and work with other people outside the managing authority, and finally, to call our people to participate in the implementation phase. We work on implementing our roadmap since January 2020. 11 implementation teams have been created, all of them on a voluntary basis. The teams are coordinated by experienced and capable frontline employees, not managers. But there is also a group of managers called champions available to assist the teams if the teams, at their own initiative exclusively, ask for champion support. We have extended our cooperation with the OECD in 3 actions, and we are progressing despite the pandemic. Of course, we had to take all precaution measures. We have replaced physical presence meetings with online ones. We work remotely, apply social distancing when being at the office, etc. And now, please allow me to present to you some indicative implementation facts.
Can you, Kostas, can we go back 2 slides, sorry?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, one back, again back. Yes, okay. We go step by step, Costa, so we check if there are questions on the details, because it's very interesting to know also, of course, more. I would have one question here on the second bullet point, Kostas, with
Yes.
your implementing teams, 11 implementing teams. You said that they were set up on a voluntary basis. So can you give us more about how to actually do these teams, and top down, bottom up, voluntary, what kind of incentives people. Yesterday we had a question from Joanna about resistance or change, and how does that work? So was all smooth in Greece?
Yes, that's exactly what we were planning when deciding to open the implementation to everybody, because we were afraid that if we had only one small team, trying to increase engagement every time, we would have a lot of resistance or indifference, maybe. So we decided to dedicate each action to a separate team and ask people to, according to their preferences, to decide where they want to contribute. And to tell you the truth, we have more than 45 people now working in these 11 implementing teams. People who are more interested in people's development, in the skills development, decided to work on the teams of the engagement team or the learning and development team. People who are more interested in financing of projects decided to work with the financial instruments team. People who are more interested in web portals decided to work on the development of a web portal for the more transparent internal opportunities portal. So this way, each team has a task to do, and we do not ask them each time what you have done. We need to develop the web portal, or we need to prepare the questionnaire for the engagement, and then we will say, no. Each team has it as a task, and they really embrace it because it's something different, and they really like it because it is something outside the regular tasks. And they all need it so much, because sometimes you do the same job for the first programming period, the second period, something different. And that was a very good opportunity for them to work on something different. And they also had the opportunity to work with other agencies. They meet and work with the Central Human Resources Management Unit, which is an agency outside the managing authority. Some of them, in the 3 teams that work with the OECD, had the opportunity to cooperate with the OECD colleagues. We also had the opportunity to work in the financial instruments and see the FI Compass is is something developed in the European Union, and they had the opportunity to share experiences with the FI Compass and bring best practices from their experience in Greece in their report. So I was very happy because our team, the initial core team, didn't have much to do during the implementation. We needed also to we just needed to measure progress, ask them to fill a report every quarter, and we just had some joint meetings with the OECD just to brainstorm or support their action. The teams are really self-managed and work with enthusiasm in their action. That was a very good idea. It proves to be a very good idea that at the beginning we decided to open and give opportunities to everybody to participate. So, regarding the implementation facts, our engagement survey with the support of the OECD has been completed. The response rate was quite high, 73%. The findings, how to these findings is ready for implementation. Findings show that people mainly ask for clear career opportunities, better organized learning and development plans, enhanced internal communication, more transparent internal mobility opportunities, and more explicitly expressed appreciation of their contribution to the achievements of the organization. 30% of our staff participated in the workshops with the OECD to identify the skills that we need to further develop. The learning and development plan has been completed, and together with our Central Human Resources Management Unit, we start implementation with a 3-year horizon. We have decided that the management team will give the example and start first with their learning and development plan, which will focus on developing team management skills, mainly in communication and in providing feedback. The report with our proposals to review the current performance management system has also been completed. It is worth saying that our Central Human Resources Management Unit decided to distribute the relative questionnaire to all managing authorities across Greece and not just to our managing authority as initially planned. The response rate was 20%. More than 300 responses were collected, and the proposals were analyzed, categorized, and sent to the decision makers. All on-the-spot verifications before the pandemic have been performed by cross-sectoral teams. We have reviewed our risk analysis in April 2020, and now we are in the process of its update. We have already organized 3 cycles of technical meetings with our intermediate bodies. The final draft of the use of financial instruments on transport and environment projects has been completed and will be presented to our management team this Monday. Finally, as far as the knowledge transfer workshops for beneficiaries are concerned, we have already contacted our beneficiaries and received first proposals, and now work with the OECD and Varinia to finalize the questionnaire to identify their specific needs and organize appropriate workshops for them. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, 2 actions where physical presence was inevitable had to be postponed, namely the Managing Authority Retreat Away Day with the team building events and a study visit to a similar Managing Authority of another member state. We hope that we will be able to start the implementation of these actions soon. Finally, the initial core team that worked with the Commission and the OECD on the development of the administrative capacity building roadmap has now a different role to support the implementing teams, measure progress over time, and contribute to keep the engagement levels high. We communicate our roadmap via our websites. We have distributed brochures, We had an interview in the Commission's Panorama magazine. We have prepared and distributed a testimonial video. Well, this is it from Greece. Thank you very much.
So my name is Marina Hudoli, and I'm representing the Ministry of Regional Development and EU funds as the managing authority of the operational program Competitiveness and Cohesion, and also, as Kostas mentioned, as a participant in this pilot action that has been presented to you over these last couple of days. I will be sharing our sort of perspective and our experience with this pilot action. I would actually like to start also at the sort of beginning of the story and the reasoning why we joined this pilot action in the first place. And that is actually a very basic reason. For sometimes we have been recognizing that we are actually lacking in the area of administrative capacity building. In addition to the audit findings that we were having, and I'm sure you'll agree that audit findings are always a very motivating factor. But in addition to this, we also sort of had this continuous experience of the area of administrative capacities being sort of overlooked and a little bit neglected due to all of the bigger and more immediate issues that were arising within the system. But in our view, the area of administrative capacity really is important, and it really is sort of an underlying current for all of the activities, affecting all of the activities that the management and control system actually is responsible for. So for us, the pilot action was a sort of an opportunity to put the spotlight a little bit on all of these issues. More concretely, some of the bigger issues that we faced. So we are functioning in quite a complex and multi-layered management and control system. So this was one issue that we recognize. As sort of a consequence to this, certain issues in communication, in coordination were also coming up in our work. And another element are the human resources management practices themselves, which could also actually use sort of further development. For example, the most basic sort of issue is always employment itself, so the number of employees in the system. But at the same time, we were facing lengthy recruitment processes. Another example is sort of having really limited opportunities for motivating employees, and this is something that came up also yesterday in our group work within this workshop. So as a result, we dived actually into this project with, as was said previously, with the guidance and with the support of the European Commission, of DG Regio, and the experts from the OECD. On the slide, you can see actually the basic steps that were presented to you yesterday, but by the OECD team. Actually, all of the 5 participating member states followed this same course of action and used the same methodology. You saw also yesterday the famous onion that was presented by the OECD. But the element that I like to focus on in terms of our experience that has proven to be sort of key is this broad participation and inclusion of sort of a broad network of stakeholders. So within the project, we had the participation, broad participation within the MA itself, both from the management and operational level. The involvement of intermediate bodies, so from all levels, the coordinating body, and also additional sort of outside stakeholders outside the system itself, including, for example, the Ministry of Public Administration, that is the responsible body on the national level for, for human resources development within the administration as a whole. We had also participation of different chambers and associations, so their representatives and representatives of actually direct beneficiaries. With that, we created, as a result of all these actions, so the roadmap for strengthening the administrative capacity within the whole management and control system. And this is something that I would like to highlight, as it was said yesterday by the OECD, so that the focus is on the administrative capacity of the managing authority. But for us, it was a little bit broader than that. We wanted to focus on the whole management and control system, because we feel that it is, I mean, the functions are delegated, but the system is sort of a single entity that is at the core of everything that we are doing. So through all of these phases that we went through, including the validation of the roadmap, the final sort of result, the final document, covered 3 areas, and they are actually kind of relating to what Kostas already presented as well. I would like to also highlight sort of this process of selection of the actions for the roadmap, and tell you a little bit about the criteria that we used in this process. So, of course, in the workshops, you get really a lot of ideas, a lot of options, but it was really important to think about the feasibility of the action, to choose and select those actions that were kind of within reach for the managing authority and for the system. And one other element that is really important is that the actions actually, that the specific actors that are relevant for the implementation of the actions are recognized, so that this element of accountability is, is present in the roadmap. So, as I said, the roadmap covered 3 areas. And on the slide, you can see actually the actions from the first one, and that is people and organizational management. This area actually focused on issues such as promoting talent management, promoting strategic HR planning, reviewing training opportunities, so focusing a little bit also on learning and development, including the development of an induction training, so focused on new staff, and preparation and implementation of an employee engagement survey, and I will come back to that. The second area related to strategic planning and coordination. And in these terms, focus was put mainly on issues of adjusting the management and control system structure. As I said, it's quite complex, and strengthening different mechanisms for information exchange, both on the formal and informal level. In this area also, covered issues of providing targeted support to the beneficiaries. And in the third challenge area, framework conditions, as you heard yesterday, it is a little bit more on the political level, and in our case, it related to issues regarding budget. Going to the implementation of the roadmap. The basic idea was that the European Commission and the OECD support would be provided so in part of the implementation. The support we would have for a limited set of actions during this phase 2 of the project, while the full implementation of the roadmap would of course be under the responsibility of the managing authority itself. So actually in the course of 2020 and now in 2021, we have been working on the implementation of the roadmap. And I have to say that this implementation has been going on in quite unexpected and unprecedented circumstances, as all of our work has in this past year. A lot of challenges and a lot of changes we have been facing with. And in this second phase of the project, for us, we have been focusing on human resources management activities. So we were having, and are having still actually, the support of Daniel's team in this regard. Two major actions that are being implemented with the support of the OECD include the preparation and implementation of an employee engagement survey. This has been done on the level of the managing authority as a sort of a pilot and testing phase. And this has been done actually in order to try to move to a little bit more data-based approach to dealing with issues and to have sort of to reach towards the real life issues that the employees are facing, to gather, you know, information about their own experience in order to identify some key areas that we then need to put additional effort in terms of improvement. You heard from Kostas, their response rate was a little bit higher than ours, but still we are happy with our response rate as well. It was 63%, so this we find really good. We feel that we, you know, were able to get the information that we need in order to try to develop actually actions that will be valuable for the employees themselves. So the second sort of big action that has been going on relates to the skills and competency gap analysis that is being conducted. So assessing what competencies are relevant and meaningful for the functioning, again, in this first step on the level of the managing authority, but with regard sort of, and the view to be able to then broaden this story to the whole management and control system. This is also something that should result, and for us this process is not yet finalized, but it should result with the learning and development plan for both the level of the managers and the operational level of the employees. And on the slide you can actually see some of the key competencies that were recognized within this process. And now actually I'm coming to sort of the most important part of the story that I would like to share with you. And these are the lessons that we learned throughout this process. So, I mean, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, more than 2.5 years now. So a lot of lessons, I think, have been learned within this process. And as a first step, and this has been mentioned before, so this need for broad participation in actually developing and implementing administrative capacity building activities. And again, not just within the management and control system, but beyond. So again, for us, it was never just about the managing authority, but the whole management and control system, so they take into account all of the perspectives of the whole system. And then again, not being just about the system, but also the stakeholders, the beneficiaries, the recipients of the support, and sort of realizing that that's what we are here for as a system. So we don't exist for our own sake, but are trying to really shift our focus to the sort of the end recipients. The second lesson learned, if I can say, is this role of active engagement. And this is something that we really have found within the project, especially. So active engagement of all of these actors that were mentioned before. And of course, participation in the project and having contact with the Commission and of course the OECD experts is really a sort of a very strong pull factor for everyone, for everyone's participation. But it's really important to stress that there is this need for a continuous commitment to these issues. Now again, of course, in this process, we sort of, in the process of the development of the roadmap, our aim is to actually identify the problems, the issues that we are having, so that that can in turn lead to sort of improvement. But what's really important is to have sort of this recognition of also the strengths that exist within the system, and to have sort of this positive outlook towards this whole process. Yesterday, a question was asked around conflicts arising within this process, and I have to say that of course there are some like differing opinions, there are different perspectives. That's what we are getting when we are gathering a broad network of stakeholders. But actually, all the participants sort of come with a positive outlook, because we are trying to change the situation for the better. So this is kind of an underlying thing that provides focus on moving forward in a way. Then there is the issue of feasibility, and I did mention this before. So you need to think about realistic actions that are within the control and within the reach of the system. But what's really important as well is not to be sort of too limiting in this sense, and this is maybe something that happened a little bit to us. So it's really important to also have this perspective of some ultimate and higher goals that you want to achieve, even if the action itself is sort of only the first step in that direction. But to have that direction in front of one's eyes, it's really important to be able to drive things forward a little bit. And this relates also to the time dimension of this whole story. So not only having some short-term actions that are sort of immediate, but also having a little bit more long-term framework is really important for the roadmap. One very important issue, again, already stated, is this distinct accountability for the implementation, for the development of the actions and their implementation. So issues of ownership, of responsibility, and for maintaining this ownership throughout time. And this, I have to say, is a real issue that is sort of continuous challenge. Now, this whole pilot action that we have been doing, it was also a sort of an experiment and a learning experience, not only for us who have been participating from the member states, but I think also for the Commission and from the OECD. And I really want to say that this whole experience actually informed both the Commission and the OECD, it informed the development of all of these tools that you have heard about and that are now being made available, for you. It has informed the final suggested structure of the roadmap. It has informed the development of the methodology that is being used, and so on. And one element that we did not have a focus on within our process is this development of the monitoring mechanisms and measuring success. And this is really, really important to have some sort of indicators that will enable to monitor the progress of your actions. And lucky for you, today you will have another presentation from the colleague Nick Tice precisely around this topic. But this is something that was not part of our experience and part of our roadmap. Related to that, I would also like to stress the need to focus on the results. So the milestones, deliverables, something that is sort of tangible and again that you can sort of monitor the progress on. And I would like to relate this to the issue of the new financing option that is being made available through the regulation, and that is the financing not related to cost. But also I would like to relate it to something that Anne Sjösten mentioned yesterday, and that is the strategic actions of technical assistance in itself. And in the end, sort of last but not least, of course, a really, really important element is the cooperation. So the managing authority and the system, we cannot do things alone. The element of cooperation is crucial for implementation of any action. And in this regard, I'm also thinking about this cooperation on the EU level. So this was also mentioned yesterday, but the peer-to-peer exchange is a really, really important element, a very valuable element that we really, I think, all of us learned a lot from. So as a sort of conclusion, I have stated here some key challenges, but I think they really come from everything that I have previously sort of stated. But again, to reiterate that it's really important to have this recognition of the importance of administrative capacity, building of the area of administrative capacity within the institution, within the system, because, and Dionysia mentioned this in her question, this is the basic ingredient that you really have to have, also in order to ensure a sort of a level of stability in a changing environment. The circumstances are changing all the time, and you have to, but this sort of dedication and commitment have to be sort of continuous in order to be able to move things forward. And this is very challenging, I have to say. This is not something that, you know, we magically have. This is something that we always have to work on continuously and sort of have a recommitment in the changing environment and so. What I would also like to state, and it's not really a challenge, but it is a major positive takeaway from this experience, and that is this element of learning that we were able to have. So from working with the Commission, with the OECD colleagues, and with other peers, in order to, you know, we really learned a lot from this experience, and this is something that we can take away and implement in future steps. For my last slide, just quickly to let you know that actually we are one of those member states who have a strong EC recommendation to develop also a national roadmap for administrative capacity building. So this is something that we are working on now. And what has been really important for us is really to build upon all of this learning, all of the experiences that we had from the pilot action, and to put this to use in this broader process. So we have been able to realize a really close and active cooperation with the coordinating body. We are using the OECD methodological approach that you have heard about yesterday. Although, of course, in our changing environment, the workshops are a little bit different now in this time of the pandemic, as you all realize. And the important thing is really for the national level roadmap that we are including so we have active participation of all management and control systems of all programs on the national level, and then further stakeholders. In the analysis, we are also sort of privileged to be able to use the draft self-assessment tool that was mentioned by Varinia yesterday. So this is something that is still in development, but we are sort of having the opportunity to test it out a little bit, you know, in advance. We are using the suggested roadmap structure from the practical toolkit that you have also heard about, and we are putting additional focus on all these elements that were sort of missing from the previous phase. And before I end the presentation, just one second. Yesterday there was a question around, you know, the time investment in all of this. As you see, we have decided to go with this broader approach for the national level roadmap. I would just like to say that yes, the effort, the time commitment is really great to do this process. But as long as we feel that sort of the gains from the process in terms of enhancing administrative capacities could be greater than this effort, I think it's really good to do. And I will end here. Thank you very much for your attention. You have
Thanks for the so kind invitation, Marco, but also on Kirsten and her team. As Marco kindly introduced, indeed, I was working for over 10 years in EIPA as a colleague of Marco, doing a lot of work with DG Employment, but also with DG Regio, and with Kirsten's team. I was involved in the development of this practical toolkit, as Christine also showed it yesterday in one of her opening slides. So throughout this experience, I'm extremely pleased to see virtually, unfortunately, so many familiar faces and names. It's a great pleasure. And indeed, now I moved since last year, summer, virtually to the OECD, because I was just telling Marco that I started in August and I'm still based in Brussels, and I haven't seen my office in Paris for a single day. But that's reality, and we shouldn't complain. So that's, I think the good thing is that we can meet each other in this virtual way. Because I was saying that, well, before diving into the indicators itself, which is the core part, we should not neglect all the others, because the indicators are, well, it's not the cherry on the cake, but the rest is as important, if not even more important. And so on the indicators, it always feels a bit like this story of King Arthur, Indiana Jones, and also Monty Python. What they all have in common is this search for the Holy Grail. And it feels a bit in the same way, this measuring of success and looking for indicators is always trying to find this Holy Grail, this one secret kind of thing that explains everything, the functioning and the rule of the world, whatever, as the Holy Grail is supposed to do. It's a bit the same with this indicator search. And I would try to also move away a bit from there. Now, in preparing some of the key things from yesterday. I just had this little scribbled things down on the kitchen table yesterday, and then you can see that we're also in homeschooling. So my kids start to draw on some things in the course of this morning. So this is how I found back my notes from yesterday. But I just want to well, touch upon some of these now, because I think these are also crucial in the rest of my presentation, and I would like to touch upon these things also later on in my presentation. I also saw that Kerstin was just also intervening, and I think this element of this not compulsory but warmly recommended is a very important thing. And the fact that you are here so numerous means already that there is at least this interest. So this aspect of you don't have to do this, but you want to do this. And I think there the stories from Kostas and also Marina were really so powerful and strong this morning, that it's really this the willingness to improve the functioning of the organization. And it's at the end, it's about this, measuring also about the success. It's about measuring trying to measure a better functioning organization, whatever that is. And we'll get to this also in a later stage. I will also get into this, the importance of the process and the engagement again throughout. The engagement in the analysis, but also in the formulation of proposals and also in the follow-up. And then we already get into the indicators and everything around. This living kind of document, well, actually, it shouldn't be a document. I mean, the roadmap, of course, it materializes in a document, but actually it's you can call it even a change management process or dynamic that is going on in the organization. And when you also heard this morning in the stories, the leadership involvement, the people involvement, all these things. So I will gradually touch upon these elements through my presentation. So in a formal content layout, it would look more like this. Before diving into the indicators, the importance of the content, what is in your roadmap, how you came to this, leads into the formulation of actions and goals. With which I'm saying it's not a technical exercise. And this is this element of this change, but also the identifying of impactful, useful kind of actions, setting of ambitions, and linking to this also useful set of indicators that you try to measure and follow. So this will be the short layout and the flow of things where I will zoom into the indicators part for sure. But before doing that, quickly touch upon these things. The onion you have seen, and I will link it back to also the toolkit that I was involved in together with Anne-Christine and her team. So in defining, well, what should we have in terms of actions? What should we have in terms of ambitions? What should we have also later on in terms of indicators to measure success? Well, it starts from the content. What do we want to have in our roadmaps? And so this onion is very strong in terms of doing the assessment. And if you had the time to look also into the toolkit, you will see that we have translated this toolkit or this onion in, I would even call it a more simple look into capacity building elements. And we have translated this also in some, well, self-assessment questionnaire, if you want. It's not a questionnaire, some guidelines proposing you some questions that if in future you will not have the help of OECD colleagues, you will not have the help of other professional facilitators, that at least you have a kind of a chapeau, a kind of something where you can base yourself upon. It's not rocket science for experts, but for people who are not into this world of processes, structures, resources, whatever, all the time, as I am and we are, it might be a bit complicated. But at the end, you should be assured that you are, with your colleagues, you are the experts in knowing what is working well and what also can be improved in the organization. These elements, these capacity building elements, they only help you to structure the reflection, to structure the thinking. But the content of it, the content of the analysis and also the improvements, to which I will come soon, this you are the masters. you are the experts. You are the professionals knowing what is working, what can be improved in the organization, and probably you also have some ideas how this can be improved, right? Now, there is also a bit of danger in this, is that we are like organizational blind. We stick with what we know. And this is, of course, where others, and we then call them the stakeholders, where they are important. And you have heard from Daniel yesterday, but also from Kostas and Marina this morning, how they built up these round tables. And even if you think this is too large and too massive and it will be not manageable and feasible to do for you, I would at least warmly encourage you to try to break out of the boundaries of your organization. Try to get also some other insights in the functioning of your organization by beneficiaries, by other stakeholders, by unions, as I've seen also in the comments passing by. So try to open the critical mass, the critical reflection mass, I would say. So I will not go into all of the details here. You can read it again, but it's just it's explaining, and I think putting also this onion structure even into some more practical, hands-on things and questions related to individuals, you, staff, colleagues, but also organizational things, processes, structures, resources. Some examples here, again, I will not go through them into detail, and many of them I think also have been nicely documented in the examples that we saw from Kostas and Marina this morning. What is important for me, while I'm just clicking through some of the examples, don't worry. What is important, however, and that's the point that I want to make, is to create balanced roadmaps. Balanced meaning don't focus only on just one element. HR, for example. There is a big risk, I'm not saying that you will, but there is a big risk that your roadmaps or potential roadmaps are focusing on this one and single thing. And most likely it will be HR. This is what is really close to us. And the risk becomes even bigger if you keep the reflection process, the analysis process, if you keep this within your organization, that you will not touch upon other elements related to beneficiaries, stakeholder management, results, processes, that it will be too narrow looking. Because that might be the problem. If we're starting from already the solutions, that we also might not come to the concrete, the good analysis of the thing. And that leads me to the next point, and I'm moving towards the indicator slowly. It's also about not only what is there, balanced, please keep this in mind, but it's also about important elements in the analysis, in the problem analysis. So this is also the scheme that we included in the toolkit. Building these roadmaps and coming to measuring success at the end of the day, it's actually moving from a current situation, the as is, the current, to a future, to be desired kind of state, if you want. And both parts are important. You cannot come to a desired or aims or good formulation of objectives and actions if you don't start from a well foundation, a good assessment, a problem analysis. And so this is how to do this in terms of the assessment. It can be via focus groups, these roundtables. It can be via self-assessment that you, based upon the questionnaire that I mentioned before, that you run with a group of people through a number of questions and identify what are the issues here. And then I come to this element of deep dive. I will come to this also in a more detail immediately. Try to go into the root causes. Don't just scratch the surface a bit into analyzing. Don't just start with the solution. We know what we want to do in terms of solving the thing. No, first identify what is the thing. What is the problem? It sounds very basic and very logic, but this is quite often where it lacks. Also later on in formulating actions, objectives, and also indicators. But also use already existing indicators. If you have measurements already in the organization, which for sure you will have, no doubt you will have information use this already to make the initial status, to do the assessment. But also other information, audits, other reports, externals, all the information that you can use to build up your state of play, to do the assessment, this is useful at this stage. Ideally, of course, also, as I said, breaking open the boundaries, involving others. Identifying shortcomings, identifying gaps, and moving to the next stage. This actions, deliverables, timeline, responsibles, results, and this will be also the next part. Starting with the deep dive, starting with the root cause. Here you can see, well, if you see as a result, a lot of people are leaving. Like every couple of months, you have to recruit half of your management authority or intermediate body. Well, this might be an indication that something is wrong. It might be that your colleagues are highly desired and that everyone wants them, but there might also be like an underlying issue, which might be staff motivation, engagement. So try to dig deeper in identifying, well, what are the causes, the root causes even of that problem. That will also help you to better identify potential solutions, translated into actions, objectives, later on also into indicators. So this just as an example, but it's not just like a fictive example. No, it's really based upon some reality. So again, getting to the causes of the problem. I'm quickly running to this, not because it's unimportant, but just I hope that this is clear also from the previous presentations. This is of course important, this well-making of the analysis, the root causes, to identify the exact and the good actions. If we want to work on the final outcome, the final goal, we want to increase efficiency and satisfaction of staff. Well, how do we do this? This should come out of your analysis. Well, we want to, what's the problem? Because people are not motivated, whatever. Well, we need to work on engagement. That has come out as one of the things. We need also to work on career planning. People are leaving because there is no perspective for them, whatever. And we also need to tackle things in a more strategic approach towards training, learning, and development. Only then you can move into the actions. And I think that's a very important, for me, a very important lesson. Don't start with proposals for actions immediately. No, start from what we call then this cascading. And that's also this narrative, and what I mentioned in the slide here before, this narrative or this performance framework. It's this kind of structure, this kind of, well, cascading down as a waterfall from the, what do we finally want to solve? What's the problem here? What do we finally want to solve? With what intention? So how will we do this before going to the in-depth level of the actions? That should be also the mental construction. And if you don't go through this, it will also be very difficult, even impossible, to put some meaningful indicators to this. So therefore that I'm taking a step back into this, what should be in there, in the roadmaps, how this should be done, putting an effort and an emphasis on this assessment part, and then formulating the actions, objectives and actions. So that should be the cascading. So translated into actions, if you see these 3 goals that I've just formulated higher up, then you can move into sense-making actions. Then you can move into, well, if this is the goal, we want to increase staff motivation, so leveraging tools, instruments, techniques, to impact staff motivation, then you can start formulating actions. And there it's up to you. Up to inspiration, and this is also where the learning and the networking comes into place. Maybe, Marco, a question to you. I don't see all the things in the chat, and I don't have all the time an eye on this. If there is like a burning issue that comes up, please interrupt me, right? Then put the question to me.
Correct. We can also open the floor to participants. Let us know with the digital hand.
For sure.
There are, because Nick is trying to catch up some time, but we have to go step by step. So if you want to step in, with a comment on your side, please do, participants. That's the training is for you.
Absolutely, Marco.
Otherwise,
thanks. So I'm counting on you, Marco, to also to see if people want to step in. But
okay,
so, good. So this in terms of the formulation of goals, formulation of actions, and the sequence is important. And that's what I mean by this performance framework, to use a very big word. What is the narrative? What's the storyline? I would say a big risk is that besides roadmaps being unbalanced, is that roadmaps are also just a collection of loose actions. We have an action here, we have an action there, we have an action there. Where's the connection? Where is the, well, storyline? And the storyline, it comes from this performance reflection. It comes from what do we want to solve? How do we want to do this in terms of goals? How do we want to do this in terms of putting forward concrete actions? And again, if you would have the time, and I really encourage you to do so, to read into the toolkit that Anne-Christine mentioned yesterday, and that I also showed in the beginning, we also have the structure of how ideally roadmaps could look like, where we also put a lot of attention, not only in the formulation of the actions and the formulation of indicators, but also in terms of what's the process behind? How do you came to this? What's the analysis? What's the storyline? Formulation of goals, objectives, and also of actions. I heard already some things of this yesterday. It needs to be realistic. We need to be, please, realistic. Absolutely. I cannot agree more. For, as I understood from many of your organizations, these kind of exercises will be first time kind of exercises into going into this work. Please use this also as a learning opportunity. I will come back to this also in terms of the indicators. Use this as a learning opportunity. So in that sense, be realistic, do things that are feasible, that are possible, but please also be at least a little bit ambitious. And that's also what I wanted to say with make sure that it's not just like a loose ideas of or plan of disconnected topics and projects. That's not what we are looking for. That's not what will serve your interest at the end of the day. So realistic, but ambitious and to the point, things that make sense, not to please anyone, any higher authority, the European Commission, no, something that is to the point, that makes a difference, that really works on an issue that you have identified. Not some kind of window dressing that we have seen too often. Don't waste your energy on these things. So that in terms of the logical flow and the importance of, again, performance framework, but this is the storyline. In technical terms, we call this performance framework. It's a storyline. How are the things connected? What do you want to achieve with it? I will also show you some examples, hopefully quite soon. Moving to the indicators, and what do we want to do with this? Well, why are we using indicators, or are we encouraging to use indicators? Well, it's to implement, or it's to progress implementation, to keep track on things. Are we on track or not? Are we completely off track, and do we have to steer? Do we have to correct, to modify? It's important to know. So for that purpose, indicators, they are to manage. They are not to give account, to send to any kind of auditor or the commission to say, well, no, this is for you to keep track of progress. I will come back to this because this is quite important. But also to measure if we are achieving things, if we are receiving, getting to these outputs or getting to these results. Are we achieving the goals that we've set forward? Are we now installing more systems of engagement? Are we now installing better and easier procedures? Do the waiting times or the processing times, are they now being reduced because we install, I don't know, any kind of system? That's also what we want to know. We want to know, maybe because we have to be accountable for this, because there is financing linked to that. or because we want to manage and learn how come that it doesn't function at the end of the day. So that is important. But also thirdly, to see if really the intended change, the impact that we want to achieve, that we can have at least a better understanding of this. And I'm trying to be really careful in how I express myself. It's not exact science in what we are doing here, but it's trying to get a better understanding so that we can learn from this for the future. And so also this learning in the organization and hopefully also across organizations, it's quite important here. So how do we get to these indicators? And my next, let's say 10, maybe 15 minutes will be structured around this. Before going into how to measure, and I have this in 5 steps, as you can see here, so the whole ideal type process, the first important question is, why are we measuring for? That's the first question. Before you design indicators, why are we measuring? What are the indicators, the measurements, what are they supposed to do? Because that's the difference between performance measurement, indicators measurement, which is like a technical thing. It's a technical process. It's a machinery kind of thing. You put in the demand, it spits out information. That's performance measurement. It becomes a management thing when you start to use this. When the spitting out of information, of data, of measurements on the indicators, when you start to use it for a purpose, then it starts to be the management of the thing. And there, what is important is that there are, I will come back to this previous slide, but there are like 3 different ways in which you can work with performance management. And this is the question that I mentioned before, why are we measuring? First, is it to, well, not first, but one element might be because we need to give account, right? We need to justify what we have been doing, how we have been doing, where the money went into, to put it very simple. And this is the classical, well, I would call it audit line. So we, and in this case, it might be even the commission, give you money to do something, we expect some results from it, right? So we also want to see what you have done with the money. So indicators and the measurement of these indicators, why is it used for? Well, it's used to give account. You have to communicate on performance, the things that you have done. So many people have trained. We have paid so much for whatever, consultancy. This is where we want to be held accountable for. The focus is external, because you report to someone else, you do this, you measure this for someone else, and it looks into the past. What have we done with it, right? This is not bad, but it's one purpose, it's one focus of the measurement. And it should not be the only focus. I think in the past, too often, we have been looking to indicators from this perspective. On the other hand, indicators could, and I would say should, also be used for the 2 other purposes. This is to steer and control, which actually means managing, and to learn. Steer and control, the managing, this is for internal purpose. You want to notice what you are doing or what you have been doing, because we want to have a better understanding how things are going on. This is certainly the case for implementation throughout the thing. To learn, this is, we want to try to have an understanding, and again, here, I'm really careful in how I express myself, try to have an understanding on what kind of results we are achieving. So this is, in terms of indicators, these are the less concrete ones probably, these learning ones. But for me, these are really interesting ones. And then I jump back to my previous slides. What is now probably defining in what context you can use which kind of indicators? Well, it's explained in this very simple slide. If between the measurement, the spitting out of data, and the judgment, is it good, is it bad, achieved, not achieved, whatever, if there is like a tight coupling, meaning if the moment of providing the indicator and the data and the judgment achieved, not achieved, whatever, if this is like immediate, then of course you are in this accountability thing. And then the type of indicators, to which I will come immediately, they will depend, of course. But if you have this kind of in-between, which I call here like a mediated or kind of interpretation or kind of dialogue, where you can explain, where you can reflect, where you can think about the measurement before a kind of judgment at the end of the day, if you have this opportunity, then the kind of indicators might also be different. Then it should not, you should not be immediately be judged or even be slaughtered for things that you haven't met, or indicators that you haven't met, or results that you haven't achieved. We don't have all the time this kind of interpretation or this dialogue function in between. That's what therefore I was also calling here this different kind of accountability, steering, control, or learning. It also depends how you can work and use with this. Now, I think the good thing in your roadmaps is that not all of the indicators should be this kind of accountability indicators, or this what we have been called in the guideline, this financing indicators. Really where it is this close link to financement, and this close link to close accountability towards the Commission or others, I'm mentioning the Commission here, but it might also be others, then of course you need to select the indicators on which you are certain, that also don't leave any room for interpretation. If you have met or not met or hardly met, no, then it needs to be straightforward. But if it's to learn or to manage, then you might start to, I would call it with permission, experiment. Then you might also take some other indicators where you can learn from, and that you also treat in such a way that you can organize dialogue, discussion, interpretation around this, right? I hope this is at least a bit clear, because this is quite essential in the whole story, I would say, because
it will become clear with the example shortly, Nick, the distinction between financeable and monitoring indicators.
Absolutely, because that's, for me, that's the first question that you and your colleagues and leaders and whatever in the organization, the first question is, what do we want to do with it? Why do we want to measure? Is it just to send a report to the Commission? Well, then it can be a simple exercise in terms of finding indicators. But if it's really to build up along these lines of this narrative, what I said before, that you can really use this for learning, for improving the functioning of the organization at the end of the day, you might to put some work in this and also use this for that purpose. So why do you want to measure? Why do you want to use it? To who do you need / want to report these things? And then make it a useful exercise, not a pro forma set of indicators. We need to do too much things pro forma, right? So make it something useful. If you put energy into this exercise, make it something that is worth the effort in terms of the process, but also in terms of the indicators. So let's move to the indicators. And here I come with this 5-step process that I mentioned before. Targeting, indicator selection, data collection, analyzing, and reporting. Very briefly. Well, targeting setting, target means it's not the same as setting targets. This is like defining your measurement effort, right? And so here I put the example, well, if you would be asked to measure like the length of the coastline of an island in front of close to the EU, you could do this in many different ways. You can really measure all the peninsulas, or you can do it more roughly. Depending on what you want to do with this, it might change your measurement effort. Again, it's the same for your exercises. Be careful for what we call in technical terms, mushrooming. You all know this, that on a morning you get up and you open up your curtains and you look into your garden, and suddenly there are like hundreds of mushrooms. Pop, 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 pop. They popped up overnight. They weren't there the evening before, and suddenly the next morning, they are there. It's the same risk with indicators. That before you realize your organization is overwhelmed with indicators, and that you start measuring things that after a while people start questioning, why are we measuring this? Does anyone still know? So really be careful for this. I'm the first enthusiast about measuring, but I'm also the first one to say, hold on, be really careful for this measurement bureaucracy, not to overdo it, because you can easily end up in this, in French they say this usine à gaz, this huge machinery that at the end of the day no one anymore knows why we're doing this. So be careful. So in identifying the actions, really tailor the nice, but also in linking indicators to this. So therefore, carefully select the activities, the programs or objectives, and then also link carefully the indicators to this. So I think it was also said yesterday by Farina, it's the well, quality before quantity. Yes, also here, don't overdo it. Find the good ones, the interesting ones, the ones that are telling. The one that are telling in terms of also indicator selection. And probably for sure, well, actually, hopefully, I would say, many of you have seen this graph or this design. It's quite a classical one, but also in this indicator search or selection, I think it's quite helpful. I think to all of this performance scheme here related to input activities. So input, the things that we put into your organization, be it money, resources, people, information, activities, what we do with this, processes, how we process this. Output is the immediate result, if you want. What we do with the input in terms of how we do these activities, the output, that should lead to an outcome results. That might be short-term or long-term. And ideally, you should have in your roadmaps also different kind of indicators. Indicators, again, depending on the purpose, depending on why we should use this, that are more input related, activity or throughput related, output, immediate output, and maybe even also try to go wild and identify some short-term result indicators, impact indicators. I will come with some examples immediately. Of course, for this final outcome indicators, you might not want to use this for accountability purposes, because here the connection between output and the final results might be not this causal, because we push on this, that it also will immediately lead to that result. Because there is this environment that also plays a role. You're not the only responsible actor to achieve certain things. Okay. So in terms of some more explanation in terms of input, human, material, immaterial resources, and you can see here, activities, things that you do, output, things that you achieve immediately. The outcome is what we finally want to have in mind. The classical example here is would be police. Input would be the resources, number of policemen and women, the material that they dispose of. That's like input kind of indicators. How many people, the money that we will put into a local police force, money into equipment, money into cars. These are like input indicators. You can measure, you should measure, you can easily measure. Activities, well, this would be, for example, the number of speed patrol. Output would be, well, how many people have been checked, how many cars have been controlled in a given time period, how many people were like speeding, or how many fines have been given. That's like output kind of indicators. So input, the numbers, numbers of in terms of human material resources, activities, what we are doing, to put it very simple. Output, well, what are the immediate results of what we are doing? So number of things done. Outcome, well, do we also see this now at the end of the year into less people dying on the streets, for example, in car accidents? Because that's like the final aim, for example. If you would see this into training, for example, it would be input would be, well, the number of materials disposed, the money available to do this, activities, trainings done, number of trainings carried out, for example, output, the number of people that attended the trainings, even levels of satisfaction of people attended the training, participants attending the training. What would be the outcome? that we finally want to have are more smarter people. I'm putting it now very simple, but that's the kind of logic that we want to have. You can see already, the more we go down here, the more we get to the outcome, the less, well, fluid, the less concrete, tangible it gets. So also in terms of accountability, the less we go down here, the less probably you want to be held accountable for this. If you receive money to do trainings, well, the number of trainings, chuck. I want to be held accountable for, fine. The number of money that we paid for trainers, fine. The number of people that participated, well, could also still be a good one. But the level of satisfaction of participants, do I want to be held accountable for this immediately? Well, maybe, not sure. But to learn from this, to manage in the organization, definitely. So you see already the difference in kind of indicator. When it comes to the final impact, are people now more skilled at the end of the day in our organization? Well, definitely I would like to see the impact of the training on this level, but there's not this one-to-one relation. It's not because we organize one training that certainly we see this in the skills level of people the next day. And so this is where this environment comes into the picture. So again, for accountability reasons, these outcome indicators or final results or whatever indicators are not the good ones. But if it's for learning purposes, for steering, for managing, if I would be a manager of the director of a managing authority, I would like to have these in my roadmap. I would like to have some indications also on this level, not to send to anyone, no, but for managing the organization to learn from this. Okay, moving on. So in terms of developing indicators, I will not go into too many technical details. We have also covered these things into the toolkit. Well, what is important, of course, the more precise they need to be for accountability purposes, indeed, also the more precisely defined they need to be, the more documented they need to be in terms of these meta files. But when they are more these learning kind of indicators, well, maybe the technical quality of indicators might be of less relevance. I will come to this later on. So be careful also in the going too technical in terms of the indicators. Let this also be a learning exercise within the organization, but also I would say to DG Regio and also to APA to also help this kind of networking around the indicators. Where do we find then, if we have identified the kind of indicators, where do we find the information? Existing registrations, don't neglect this. You measure already more than you are aware of. There is already more information floating around in your organizations than you're actually used today. So use this information. Don't reinvent the wheel, the hot water or whatever. Use some existing things. So existing registrations, you see advantages and disadvantages. Put this into balance in terms of cost benefit. Additional registrations, do we have to set up new things? Well, might be nice, might be necessary, might be useful, but there might also be a cost with it, and we might have it immediately available, for example. Surveys, we heard before in both in Costa's and Marina's presentation, the use of surveys. Very interesting. If you can have the help of organizations like mine and OECD, but also the Commission, please do it. Otherwise, learn from each other. Don't reinvent the wheel, also not here. Self-assessments. You are experts in your areas. Use this, but be aware for what I called before this organizational blindness, right? Risk of gaming, of, well, turning the measurement, the indicator. We all know this. I mean, we're all humans. Gaming, we all know this. Technical measurements might be linked to IT equipment. External observers, use externals to also provide information on how you are doing. Stakeholders, users, beneficiaries, ask them, use them via surveys or other ways. Other public organizations, audit institutions, for example, research institutions, there are plenty. Use this information.
the risk is that it might not be immediately designed for your needs and purposes. But still, in an initial stage, it might be interesting to measure and to find information also from their side. International organizations, statistical offices might provide you with excellent quality. They are authorities, really reliable. But again, it might not be immediately, again, tailored to your immediate, to the immediate needs of your organization. So be careful. But it might be useful, certainly, to learn in the initial stage. I will not go into the analysis too much. I mean, it might be risky to go technical. I rather prefer, before jumping to some short examples, to mention a short thing about the reporting. When you have identified already in the beginning why you want to do this, you should also think on, well, how you should communicate around this. And I was so pleased to hear this morning Kostas presenting the different means and ways how you are communicating around your roadmap, being it with indicators or not. I mean, but in general, I mean, this is now about indicators, but I think it can be used in general as well. Think about these things. I'm not saying you should do all of these things, but at least consider these things. Internally, on your left-hand side, externally, right-hand side. Why do we want to use this information? Annual reports, annual plans might be necessary, but we all know that these things are not, no one reads these things, right? So this is pro forma for me. Sorry to be blunt and direct here, but it's a fact. So if we want it to really make sense, then we might also need to think about other things. Well, it might be that we need to provide financial documents or reporting. Okay, if so, use it for that purpose. Specific publications. I also heard Kostas saying this, interviews or news flashes or even in newspapers. That's then also towards the external. But think also, how do you communicate internally about the progress, not only the making of your roadmap, but also the implementation, also the achievement or not achievement. Really interesting to also learn from where we didn't meet the objectives and the things that we put forward. So please think about this. Again, I'm not saying you should do, but think about this. But also externally. Do you want to be this brave to reach out to newspapers, media, other interest groups, external stakeholders, executive politicians, whatever? I mean, think for yourself. But use this occasion as well. I think it would be a missed chance only to use it for an annual report. I think my message is clear on this. So here, yes.
Nick, I'm wary of time, so I think we could be moving also to the examples, correct? Somehow.
Here they come, okay. Marco.
Yeah. Great, because that will give a great.
Absolutely, no worries. I will get to them immediately. Just before, I want to say quality before quantity, yes, but technical quality is not the only quality of an indicator, right? Don't search for the Holy Grail. Remember, try to find indicators that serve your purpose. And your purpose, this is what you want to do with this, how you want to use the roadmap. And this is what I mentioned in my picture in the beginning. It's a change management thing actually in the organization. It's not a technical thing, it's a change management. Coming to some examples, and you will see, well, hopefully you will see that these examples have been built up from this perspective of this narrative, this performance framework. I will try to talk you through. First example, if the final aim is to increase professionalism of staff, well, what could we be thinking of in terms of actions that we could take? I'm not saying could take. Well, we could think of using the, I think excellent, by the way, competency framework that DG Regio has developed, using this assessing competences based upon the DG Regio framework, for example. Or the managing authority could organize some senior level workshops related to HR. Well, what did this bring us? Well, from this we could develop individual development plans, for example. So first we assess the competences, we develop individual development plans. We could also, based upon identified gaps, develop a training catalog or revise the training catalog. And we could also develop on a senior level a learning and development strategy as kind of immediate results of these first initial actions. Why? Well, with this, we have some good identification of where we should invest more, and we should organize some specific trainings. And then at the end, that might lead, as one of the things, to a very concrete addition, or at least partially element of strengthening or increasing professionalism. That's the storyline. In terms of indicators, just click them on immediately. Well, should we set up an indicator for if the management authority organizes this? We can. You can say very simple, yes or no. Yes, we do this, no, we don't. For the other one, assessing the competences using the framework, well, here an interesting indicator would be at the end of the day, well, for example, percentage of staff participating in the exercise. How many colleagues in the managing authority have been assessed, their competence assessed using the framework? It's a quite straightforward indicator here. It's still on this, well, throughput, output kind of level, right? So the training catalog is revised. Development of this strategy, well, yes and no. Have you done it or haven't you done it? It can be as simple as that, to be honest, right? Coming again to this competences assessment, well, number of staff participating, using this is one thing, but of course, the number of people that have a follow-up on this, so the number of people or percentage of staff that also have like individual plans developed, that's like a nice output indicator, right? Coming out of this assessing of the competency framework or using the competency framework. So you see already, like it's already a more interesting kind of indicator. Using the framework, okay, but doing something with this, now it starts to get interesting. Well, leading to organization of trainings, okay, as I said before, the number of trainings quite easily to measure, right? Does it say anything? Well, yes, but also not much, right? Honestly, but okay, it's an easy one. People participating, numbers of people or percentage of targeted staff. It's not just anyone. No, if we organize a targeted training on, I don't know, e-invoicing in your managing authority, well, I want to have the people for which the training is dedicated to be there. Not maybe all the others. So percentage of targeted staff, that's already a quite specific and telling indicator, right? If you have this kind of information. Well, number of people or people receiving certificates. Again, does it explain everything? No, but it might be again, a kind of accountability indicator if you need to report on this. Well, people, the level of satisfaction of people with the trainings, again here, if I would be the director, I would like to know this. If we as the managing authority are organizing trainings, I would not just like to know how many trainings we do, how many people participate, and if there was like a certificate. I would also like to know how useful they found this. How satisfied were they with the training? Can they use this? Again, not a report to anyone, or maybe to the one who is delivering the training, but to use this for management purposes. And so please also use this in your organizations for this. But then, of course, what we want at the end of the day is to see an increased level of professionalism, right? How do you manage this? How do you measure this? So we might look into satisfaction trends. Does it explain everything in terms of professionalism? No. But you might use this as a proxy, as a kind of an indication. It might tell you maybe a bit of the story. Or efficiency data. Making of mistakes, for example. in files, in processing, reports, whatever. Satisfaction of stakeholders. Well, do we see now, well, do you do this kind of stakeholder satisfaction measurements? How satisfied are your beneficiaries with the work that you do, for example? Do you measure this? What do you see from this? Again, you will not immediately report this to anyone as kind of accountability, but I would like to know this. If this is the final aim, why you do this assessing of competences via the framework, the initial thing in the beginning of my logic here, if this the final aim is to increase professionalism, I would like to know if we are now more professional than we were before we did all this training and these investments, right? One example. And then it comes to this financeable and to monitoring. If it is really, I mean, money involved in terms where you need to be accountable for, right? Then the kind of indicators do matter. And this is, I think, as a kind of summary what I presented before. If you really need to present, for example, to the Commission, like, what have you done with the money that we give you? So show us that you made, well, what you have done and how you've done things. Well, here, the first ones, as you can see, number of staff undertaking, staff who developed these individual plans, number of trainings, number of staff participating, percentage of staff receiving certificates. All of these things, if I would be a director in an authority, you could hold me accountable for. No worries. Are these the immediate interesting ones for managing my organization? Not directly or in first instance. Yes, they are interesting, but I would also like to have some other information. And again, that's my message here. Please also include this other kind of information, the more monitoring, as we call them here. If you would allow me, Marco, maybe a second example. Well, I developed a couple of them. Probably I will skip this one. It's related to staff motivation. Well, I will show them immediately the things. I will just quickly run through. So how do we want to increase staff motivation, increase the levels of satisfaction? After your diagnosis, your deep dive, and your really finding the root causes, well, we want to carry out this organizational mapping exercise. We found out that, well, the structure of the organization, the divisions of teams, whatever, doesn't work that properly. We need to carry out this mapping exercise. We need to work on training again, and we need to work maybe on a mobility scheme, an internal mobility scheme within the government, whatever. So this is what we have identified. So then, as some intermediates, we can establish a working group on internal communication. We can work on the workflows. We can look into the ways of how we can engage better temporary staff. Do we need to set up indicators for this? Well, maybe, not sure. Revision of the training catalog, again, you can see here. We can do the carrying out of this satisfaction survey. Kostas and Marina, they already mentioned this. Well, in terms of indicators to put on this, well, have you done it or not? Simple. Percentage of staff participating. I saw Kostas already gave some figures there. Is it telling everything? No, but it's a good indication already. And then, of course, you look into the details. What do the details tell you? The levels of satisfaction, dissatisfaction on different things. We communicate on these things, and then looking in again to, does it now at the end of the day increase the level of motivation, satisfaction? Trends, but also indicators that you measure. Turnover rate, absenteeism. Is it explaining everything? No, far from. But they might give you an indication of. Last example, Marco, and then I hand over. Well, we have noticed a problem in terms of payment procedures. We received complaints, there were delays, it took an awful lot of time, whatever. I mean, you can make it up yourself, the analysis. What do we want to do? Well, we start with an assessment of the current procedure and we do the needs of the stakeholders. Action. Following up on that, well, we set up a project to redesign the whole procedure in a kind of lean way. Technical term, we want to do it as simple, as lean as possible. From that, we might notice that we could move into some, or we might benefit from some kind of e-invoice system. So, but before we dive into this installment, we do a feasibility study on this. Does it make sense to run into this? Well, yes, and we install it, or we want to install it. And that will hopefully lead us to simplified payment procedure. So this could be in your roadmap, yeah? But of course, not everything at the same time. You will have this time sequence. It was also mentioned, I think this morning, but also yesterday, you can build in this timeline. Not everything should happen tomorrow or the day after. You can have a time horizon of 2 years, 3 years, with intermediate steps, intermediate deliverables, intermediate indicators, yeah, that can give you an idea on the progress and the process made. Have we done this assessment? Well, yes, no, simple. Of course, when you've done this assessment, there's also this qualitative information that you have in there. Should we put an indicator on this? Not sure. It might be. The feasibility study, well, have we done or haven't we done? It's very simple in terms of accountability kind of indicator. Installing, yes. And then, of course, it gets interesting. To what has all of this led? Is now the payment procedure simplified? Because you might have spent, I don't know, 500,000 euros on an e-invoice system. Check. We have paid the consultant, we have paid the technical people who have done this, work done. Well, maybe, maybe not. I would then like to see if then also this has led to a simplified payment procedure. How can we measure this? For example, in reduction of payment time. Do we see, and that could then be the indicator, do we see a reduction of the payment time by, I don't know, to put a figure on this, 10%? Or are all the requested payments, are they paid within X amount of time after receiving? I'm just making up, you know much better the content details. For example, well, voila, X amount of payments paid within X amount of days. What was the status before? Before you installed the system, what is the status now? Very strong. If you can do this, if you can measure this, if you can even communicate on this. But maybe also the satisfaction of your beneficiaries, other stakeholders. It's not only the technical things that you measure in terms of process, whatever, but maybe they might say, well, yes, everything is much faster now, but we still have issues with that and that and that and that. Who knows? So you can measure these things yourself, and you can also ask them. And that's also a kind of indicator. I think I've spoken too long, Marco, and with probably too many details, but always happy now, but also afterwards. You can also share my contact with the colleagues and participants. Always happy to go into more details.